Hello, I'm Ethan, your New York-based organization development coach, and welcome to today's video where I shine the spotlight on one of my absolute favorite companies of all time, the pantheon of socially responsible organizations, Patagonia. So we're going to dive right into it. If you like the video, please be sure to subscribe, share it. Let me know what you think about the information that I share. Make a comment. I'm super excited to be doing this video. It's a company that I've wanted to cover for years. So let's dive right into it. So first off, let's start at the beginning. There's a few things I want to cover during this video. So how did Patagonia become one of the most reputable company in the United States? Well, it goes back 50 plus years to the founding of the company by Yvon Chouinard. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to talk a little bit about the values of the organization, why the founder gave away what was valued at $3 billion of the time. He gave away the company to fight climate change, and where the company is now dealing with restructuring and transformation, as any great organization does. So how did Patagonia become the most reputable company in the United States? So let's start out at the beginning with Yvon Chouinard, the founder. He didn't give a damn what anyone else thought that he should be doing. He had an irrepressible sense of adventure, a love of the outdoors, tireless curiosity, always to find a better way, and an unwavering moral conviction to do what was right, and a selfless humility that made the whole package work. So I want to go back and give acknowledgement. This article was written by Doug Sondheim, who's explored and researched Patagonia. As Patagonia celebrates its 50th year, its 50th anniversary, making it, throughout its history, one of, if not the most well-respected companies in America, Yvon Chouinard, the founder and former CEO, and Vincent Stanley, Patagonia's director of philosophy. I mean, how many companies do you know of? It's a rhetorical question. There are none that I know of. How many companies have a director of philosophy? They wrote a book entitled The Future of the Responsible Company, what we've learned from Patagonia's first 50 years. So it was a redo or an update of when these two individuals wrote the company's 40-year anniversary book. So they talk about dramatic shifts and changes that every company, including them, had gone through, and also changes that are going on throughout the world. And we're going to talk about one of them in a little bit, global climate. So one significant change was a 2018 rewrite of their purpose statement in the book, making it unequivocal. We're in business to save our home planet. A second change noted in their revised purpose statement was that Chouinard and his family put their money where their mouth was. Rather than take the company public, they gifted 100% of their $3 billion stake, their fortune, their $3 billion, to the Patagonia Purpose Trust and Hold Fast Collective to fund their commitment to the planet in perpetuity. What does that mean? They said, here, planet, here's our $3 billion little company. Use the money in the future to fight climate change. So that's something that I wanted to literally start right out of the gate and say, this is Patagonia. This is what an amazing company can stand for. So Yvon Chouinard's first test of environmental stewardship came years before he even founded Patagonia. So it started out in the 1960s. He was an avid rock climber. I mean, that was his passion. And as he was rock climbing, he found that he was unhappy with the pitons, or the steel spikes that you jam in the rocks to help you ascend, to climb up. He wasn't happy with what was on the market, so he bought a steel forge or a metal forge from a junkyard in 1957, and he learned how to make his own pitons. So it talks about a little bit more, the author of the article, about how he perfected his craft. He made these perfect pitons. And so that's kind of where the book started. The book, our 50 years of being responsible. So Chouinard and his partner, his business partner at the time, Tom Frost, made what would become a legendary decision to shift away from the pythons for the rock climbing, and it foreshadowed many other decisions Yvon would make over the next 50 years, each with a similar pattern of the company, their decisions, their values, and their impact. Come to grips, always be thinking as a business, always be thinking organizationally about the impact you're making and the damage you may be doing. And to set out in your business operations bright lights into how you shift your business, always be able to shift your business to reduce damage, force yourself to innovate inside new constraints. So in the case of rock climbing, scaling, rappelling, the innovation was newly designed aluminum chocks that left the rock unaltered or clean. So the pythons, when Yvon's redesigned pythons, when you jammed them in the rock and you pulled them out, there was zero net damage done to the rock. So to leave with a clean rock strike. Crude versions of chocks had been around for years, but were less known, blah, blah, blah. To build trust in his new chocks, Chouinard used them successfully to climb the nose route of El Capitan, the mountain range. So it talks about his continued love in the early 1970s of rock climbing and rappelling, but launching Patagonia. In the early 1970s, Chouinard started selling climbing clothing for purely practical reasons. In the early years, climbers were still wearing sweats, cut-off chinos, dress shirts. None was durable. On a trip to Scotland, he found corduroy fabric, which made excellent abrasion-resistant pants. He ordered some of it. He found rugby shirts that were tough and had collars that kept his gear from cutting into his neck. He ordered some of them. This all gave Yvon Chouinard the idea high-margin clothing business could support lower-margin equipment business, which at the time was only earning about a 1% profit in his sales. In 1970, this epiphany became what's now known as Patagonia, which he founded with his wife. The textile industry in 2023 is recognized as one of the worst polluters on the planet, but in the early 1970s, this problem wasn't as clear-cut as it is today. Back then in the 1970s, environmental issues weren't largely considered a government's responsibility. As long as business stuck to regulations, they didn't think too much about the impact of their operations. While Patagonia did fight for environmental causes for the first 15 years of its existence, it paid little attention to its own environmental footprint. It wasn't part of the societal fabric of business and what was considered. That changed in 1988 when a faulty ventilation system in their Boston store forever transformed how they viewed their responsibility as a business to their clients, to their employees, and to the environment. Unknown to the company, formaldehyde was being added to their cotton fabric at the mill to prevent shrinkage and wrinkling. The faulty ventilation system spread the off-gassed formaldehyde into the store, literally poisoning Patagonia's employees. The easy solution would have been to fix the ventilation, snip, snip, fix, done. But Patagonia chose to see the incident as a larger wake-up call. Like the earlier shift away from those pythons that he was buying from other manufacturers, they followed the same protocol. Again, adapt constantly to do minimum damage. They, as a company, came to grips with the damage that was being done. They changed their business and innovate inside new challenges, new situation constraints. So Stanley, remember, director of philosophy, referred to this behavior at Patagonia as the cotton lesson. Beyond the formaldehyde, Patagonia realized it knew little about where its products came from and how they were made, which was a problem. They decided to put their employees on a bus 40 at a time to see the conventional cotton fields in the Central Valley of California, where they were based. Patagonia, since its inception, has been based in Southern California. The moment our bus pulls off Highway 99, you could smell the organophosphates, Stanley recalled in a conversation, which was a nerve. Okay, listen to this. It was a nerve gas developed during World War II used in cotton fields to kill all living organisms, including opposing enemy armies. It smelled awful. There were no worms or other life in the soil. The field trips left a stomach-churning, unforgettable impression on Patagonia's employees. A company commissioned study found that cotton wasn't much more natural than nylon due to the heavy use of chemicals. So what did they do? What did they do at Patagonia? They determined that they were no longer going to purchase that sourced cotton fabric material that had been treated with that poison. They were going to go and seek out cotton that was ethically, environmentally safe, prepared, treated. Remember, in the early 1970s, there were no regulatory environment in which there were dictates that you behave a certain way in terms of treating material with chemicals, purchasing certain materials. There were no regulations against using conventional cotton and no customers asking for organic cotton. Patagonia just didn't care. They made the decision to stop using conventional cotton. It was another bright line that they refused to cross. Their moral compass, their ethical behavior prevented them from doing so. That decision made the business more difficult for a few years for them, as organic cotton was harder to source and tougher to spin. Margin shrank, growth slowed. Their business financially was impacted. Working with suppliers, they eventually innovated around the challenges. Now, decades later, they're moving to regenerative organic cotton, which, beyond not only avoiding chemicals, decreases water use and tillage. This has created additional constraints that Patagonia is currently innovating. What you're going to hear is over and over and over again. This company called Patagonia, from its inception, has been driven by a pathological desire to minimize adverse impact and positively impact or position itself for future success the right way by following its moral compass to its North Star. That's what it means to be driven by people with ethics. So Vincent Stanley from Patagonia on the future of the responsible company. Getting back to the publication of the book, between their director of philosophy, Vincent Stanley, and Yvon Chouinard, founder, former CEO. For decades, businesses have talked about sustainable development. But as Vincent Stanley shared with the author of this story, and I'm sorry, I didn't give acknowledgement, so let me go back and just Christopher Marquis in this article. I recently talked to Vincent about his book, The Future of the Responsible Company, what we've learned from Patagonia's first 50 years. Not surprisingly, a key takeaway in that conversation was this concept of regeneration. It's a key theme of not only talking to Vincent Stanley, the co-author, but also it's a key theme of Patagonia's 5+ decades of doing business. One of the most significant strides Patagonia has taken towards regeneration is through its Patagonia Provisions Initiative. This venture has advanced regenerative agriculture, showing the potential of transforming food systems to contribute positively to the planet. Through Patagonia Provisions, the company aims not only to produce high-quality food products, but also to embrace agricultural practices that restore soil health, enhance biodiversity, and sequester carbon. This approach demonstrates Patagonia's commitment to rethinking its role in the food industry, forging a path towards sustainable and regenerative practices. And oh gee, I only thought of Patagonia in terms of their outdoor merch, their attire, their camping products, or hiking or mountain climbing. This is a company that makes products as a result of its founder and its people's strong love of the outdoors and their engagement through their lifestyle and commitment, therefore, to saving and minimizing impact to our environment. That is hardwired. Can you go back and think about your organization and what your central ethical constructs, your code of conduct, your principles, your moral clarity? Do you have any? It may be written down on your website, but this is hardwired from the founder, even before the company was started, through the practices of all of its people. So I want to go a little bit further. During our conversation, Vincent Stanley also highlighted how one business's waste can become another company's feedstock, fostering a virtuous cycle of positive impacts. By emphasizing the importance of reusing and recycling, Patagonia seeks to reduce its environmental footprint and promote a more sustainable approach to production and consumption. It's an organic end-to-end continuous loop life cycle of innovation, reducing impact, harm, and finding the most innovative solution to protect the environment. So in discussing why he and Patagonia founder Yvon Chouinard decided to write the book, we revised how much has changed in the last 10 years, meaning when they were at their 40th anniversary and then subsequently 10 years later, their 50th. They're 10 years since the 2012 version, the 40-year anniversary, the responsible company, what we've learned from Patagonia's first 40 years. Vincent reflected that they wrote the new book to document the significant changes in sustainable practices over the last decade, while also acknowledging the enduring factors that remain unchanged. For example, we discussed what it means to be a responsible company as the requirement and definition of responsibility has changed over the last 10 years. Look, this is important stuff. This is really important stuff. And let me frame that. It's important because we hear buzzwords, right? We hear social corporate responsibility. We hear conscious capitalism, all those things, ethical culture, all of these things that may sound like buzzwords. For certain organizations, they are. But for certain organizations, vis-a-vis Patagonia, they live it, man. They breathe it. When you talk about culture and reputational brand and what it means to have an amazing workplace environment, they've been living it since its inception. They have established decades-long, 5+ decades-long track record of success in terms of living their values, living their core values. So individuals who share their values, there's no war on talent for a place like Patagonia. In fact, they face an alternate, a competing challenge, which is they have a lot of people who love their values, love their company, love their products, and know their reputation as a great place to work and want to come work for them. So I want to play a video that kind of demonstrates some of this kind of passion. So Yvon Chouinard, I alluded to it before, but I want to explain this. As the founder and former CEO of the company, he and his family made a decision to give away all of their holdings, $3 billion, into a trust fund to be used to fight climate change. $3 billion, the totality of that family's aggregated wealth through the founding and years of successful operation of the business.
Behind the world-renowned company famous for outdoor clothing and gear is 83-year-old Yvon Chouinard, a climber, surfer, and lifelong environmentalist who just gave away his estimated $3 billion business born from blacksmithing in a shed. His family transferred ownership of Patagonia to a trust and nonprofit organization created to funnel all of the apparel company's profits to fight climate change and defend nature. Instead of going public, you could say we're going purpose, Chouinard wrote in a public letter. Instead of extracting value from nature and transforming it into wealth for investors, we'll use the wealth Patagonia creates to protect the source of all wealth. The reluctant billionaire has never been swayed by business norms, even encouraging consumers to limit their spending at his company.
You've heard of recycle and reuse, stuff like that. You also have to consider refuse. Refuse to buy something just because, if you don't need it, don't buy it.
For decades, he's given away 1% of Patagonia's annual sales to environmental causes.
For me, it's an earth tax. It's a tax, taxing ourselves for being polluters, for using up non-renewable resources.
But the climate advocate says that's no longer enough, writing, "We can save our planet if we commit to it." And that's just what Chouinard is doing. Emily Ikeda, NBC News.
So the notion of, I love that phrase, and it just keeps coming back to me in my consulting work and my talking to clients and organizations and business owners and leaders. We're going, not public, we're going purpose. They've been going purpose since before they were even founded for 50 years. But what's your organization's purpose? I mean, really, really. Before you keep transacting business, before you keep thinking about making your monthly numbers and all of the kind of transactional considerations of operating a business, I suggest you think about that. That's a powerful statement. What's your purpose? Because it drives everything. It drives the kind of people who want to come work for you. It drives the kind of people who want to buy from you, the people who want to partner with you. It fuels everything. So that's a key consideration, is what's your purpose? So if there were any doubt, I want to go to ABC News now, and this is going back to a little less than 2 years ago, September 22. If there was any doubt about where outdoor clothing company Patagonia stood on environmentalism, it was quickly put to rest last week when founder Yvon Chouinard and his family donated their ownership to efforts to protect our planet. Think about what we're going through right now in the summer of 2024. Every time you turn on the news, there are constant threats, danger of high heat levels, people dying because of increased record-setting heat off the charts. Do we think that global warming and climate change is a joke? It's been a very serious consideration for a long time. So what are organizations doing to deal with that? Well, I love this. From Yvon Chouinard wrote it on the company's website. Earth is now our only shareholder. That's instead of going public, going purpose, where he gives away $3 billion into a trust to use those funds to be able to support global climate initiatives. But can the generous donation from a billionaire, this one valued at more than $3 billion, and the spoils from a successful retail company move the needle on finding solutions to mitigate global warming? Experts told ABC News that the unprecedented move itself won't be enough to make significant strides in curbing emissions and the rise in global temperatures. But, tip of the spear in acting first with their moral compass, their North Star guiding principles. The domino effect that results from inspiring future philanthropists to make similar donations could reverberate throughout the climate fight they hypothesized. The drastic nature of the move is emblematic of the dire consequences that could result if major action is not taken. Hans Skoll, head of environmental grants, campaigns, and impact for Patagonia, told ABC News. They've been dealing with this. Patagonia has been concerned about this for decades. It really just acknowledges the increasing urgency around the crisis, around climate, around biodiversity, and around how those impact people and communities around the world, Cole wrote. This is not something that is new to Patagonia. It's not a PR stunt. It's not a play for goodwill. It's not a way to shift some kind of negative press it's getting for treating its employees abysmally or creating toxic environmental impact. They've been trying to get ahead of this since their founding. Here's how you know a company is sincere. Years ago, Patagonia, Yvon Chouinard, when he was still the CEO, he's no longer CEO, he fired his chief marketing officer because he felt that the company was growing too quickly. And he just knew that when a company grows too quickly, that's at the expense of it adhering to its ethical construct, its code of conduct, its core principles. So he fired his chief marketing officer because he said, whoa, we're growing too quickly. What is that? Could you imagine working for an organization, a leader who did that? Donations from the wealthiest Americans occur on a regular basis, but rarely draw as much attention as the gift made by Yvon Chouinard. The donation differs from most billionaire philanthropy for two key reasons. First, the donation involves the giving away of the company. Let me say that again. This is not him giving away money made. It's giving away the actual company called Patagonia. Chouinard gave up nearly all of his shares in Patagonia and vowed to donate the company's annual profits. However, the maneuver draws on a two-tiered stock system of voting and non-voting shares, allowing Chouinard to retain control of the company. Under this arrangement, Chouinard donated 98% of his non-voting shares in the company to a nonprofit, the Holdfast Collective. However, 2% of the shares, which make up all of the company's voting shares, are retained in the Patagonia Purpose Trust. The Chouinards have total control of Patagonia through the trust, and they're giving everything else away. Daniel Hemmel, law professor at NYU, told ABC News. The move is unusual, but it's not unique, noting that dual-class share structures are used at companies like Google and the New York Times. So it's not unique. Okay. The second feature of this $3 billion Yvon Chouinard donation that distinguishes it centers on the nonprofit that he formed, which will allow him to pursue political advocacy and donate to political candidates. Here we go, heading into the 2024 US presidential election cycle. Most large dollar philanthropy made by wealthy people goes to a 501c3, such as the Gates Foundation. Donations to such organizations are tax deductible, but the groups are forbidden by law from participating in political campaigns. However, the nonprofit created by Chouinard as the recipient of his donation, the Holdfast Collective, is classified as a 501c4, which means the gift foregoes an income tax deduction, but the organization can participate in politics. The collective that was created as a result of this, giving away of the Chouinard family $3 billion. The collective can advocate for causes and political candidates in addition to making grants and investments in our planet. This is hardcore. This is hardcore. So I mentioned that Yvon Chouinard, when he sold that $3 billion in the shares, he gave up control effectively as CEO, and he moved away from that role. Patagonia's new CEO talks about the company's restructuring after this to fight climate change. Okay, so we're literally going to just a little more than a year ago, back to June 2023. Okay, so Ryan Gellert, CEO of Patagonia, was talking during an Aspen, Colorado Ideas Festival. So Yvon Chouinard gave Ryan Gellert the simplest of tasks when Gellert took over as CEO of Patagonia. All he wanted was for Gellert, his latest successor as Patagonia's frontman, to redesign the business structure to where it could give away most of its profits to environmental causes while remaining fiscally sound. Give away profit, remain financially viable, give away our profit. And then, Gellert says, Chouinard, after giving him that mandate, went fishing. All right, I'll see you later. I'm going fishing. Absolutely genius. With Chouinard, who founded Patagonia back in 1973, en route to becoming one of the most influential people in the outdoor world, enjoying the simpler side of life, Gellert has now gone to work. He said it took about 18 months from his initial talk with Yvon Chouinard to figure out the details of the restructuring, but they've announced a radical new approach. So with Chouinard's blessing, Patagonia's ownership was transferred to the Holdfast Collective and the Patagonia Purpose Trust we talked about. The idea is that the collective controls all the money and the trust controls the voting stock within the company. Any profit that doesn't go back into the business now goes directly to fighting climate change. This is it, man. This is all the result of Yvon Chouinard's lifelong passion, love of the outdoors, of mountains, camping, hiking, of being passionate about surfing. This is it. This is the lifestyle. And when you want to work or have worked for Patagonia, you know it. It's core in the organization's DNA, and that's what's so appealing. It's like moths being attracted to a flame because it's so appealing to people who share the values. It's easy to be a part of this tribe. Absolutely. As Gellert put it, new CEO of Patagonia, Patagonia is a for-profit business that just happens to give away most of its profits. It's a for-profit business that just happens to give away all of its profit. This is Gellert speaking about Chouinard. He just kept continuing to believe there's value in Patagonia continuing to exist as a model for a different kind of business, a model for a different kind of business, Gellert said of Chouinard. I've got 2 young kids. I care about them deeply. The truth is there's a 0 chance they will inherit the planet in the shape that I grew up with, period. I think that ship has sailed. I think it's humanly possible that we reverse the impact that we've had, but I'm not confident that we will. I feel like instead, we, as a company, as a society, take your pick. We've got a responsibility to just show up and do everything that we can. Patagonia's restructuring is a radical new approach to business in the fight against climate change. And still, Gellert, who became Patagonia's CEO back in 2020, amid the global pandemic, never tried to play up the new model as anything that will save the planet, but as just a small step in making real difference. He hopes other businesses, here's the hook, he hopes other businesses will follow suit with similar thinking, but his experience talking to other executives paints a picture of sorrow. Look, here's the reality. For 15 years, I've been, as a culture transformation coach and business growth coach, I've been trying to, apostolatize the idea of companies taking a more ethical approach to business. And it's tough. It's tough, even when you can prove a increased ROI in terms of your people's performance and productivity by being more ethically oriented. It's a hard sell. It's still a challenge. And it's like turning a battleship, but you need to turn the steering wheel to start that process of change. And that's what was going on in 2020 at Patagonia. In truth, that's what was going on since the inception of the company back in 1973, because of the values, the ethics, the morality of the founder. So Patagonia now, and this is the part where I want to share that even companies that have the most awesome culture, they're driven by the highest ethical standards, they struggle. They're going to invariably, every company comes up against external or internal challenges. It's how you respond to that. So Patagonia to lay off as many as 90 employees if they won't relocate. So Ventura, California-based Patagonia has told around 90 remote workers that if they want to keep their jobs, they'll have to move to one of 7 metro areas, none in California. So we'll need you to physically be in one of 7 metropolitan areas. And the employees all happen to be in customer care roles. And they're all scattered throughout the country. And they take customer calls and they respond to email and chat messaging from home or wherever else they're working. I think a lot of people are still trying to absorb the fact that it's happening, said a Patagonia customer service worker, who asked not to be named because they planned to be laid off and didn't want to endanger their severance package. Oh, okay, so yeah, even companies with the greatest track record of ethical behavior, they have to make business decisions. So employees were told about this. Most of them have chosen to be laid off rather than to relocate. The affected workers represent a little more than 1/3 of Patagonia's customer service staff. So they had a town hall, they had a video town hall, and they talked about this. But during the meeting, employees were told that the outdoor apparel company wants them to move to one of 7 hub cities. They were given a list, and they were given 2 options by Patagonia. One, to live within 60 miles of one of those 7 hub cities and in the same state, or accept the layoff with a severance package. So that's happened, right? But I just wanted to make you aware that, again, even in the most visionary, forward-thinking organizations, they all contend with very real practical considerations. And it's not necessarily that they are going to have to make tough choices. It's how they treat their people. Patagonia became famous for letting staff cut out early to go chase waves. Now it's asking dozens of employees to relocate because it's overstaffed. For more than 50 years, Patagonia built a reputation as one of the most respected brands on the planet. Aside from producing fleece vests that are equally ubiquitous in corporate offices and mountain lodges, the outdoor apparel company is known for being outspoken against climate change and for donating a portion of its sales to environmental groups. So we talked about that. But more than that, Patagonia's conscientious approach to business has extended always to its employees. And this is the point I want to make for companies who are dealing with employees. And how do you treat employees? From the start, Yvon Chouinard, the mystic climber turned entrepreneur who founded the company back in 1973, so from the start, Yvon Chouinard, he set flexible work hours that gave staff the freedom to go surfing when the swells were right or pick up their kids from school, all part of a, back then in the early 1970s, an alternative approach to business that Chouinard outlined. He described it in his autobiography, Let My People Go, surfing. So it didn't come as a surprise that when Patagonia announced earlier this week, it was asking a third of its customer service staff to either move to those one of 7 hub cities or part ways with the company. Of course, that kind of decision was going to make news because of the track record of 50 years of treating its people with respect, civility, empathy. So head of communications at Patagonia, Corley Kenna, told Fortune that for much of the last year, its customer service team, which has been fully remote since the pandemic, was between 200 to 300% overstaffed. So they kept on extra staff for going on a year after, during COVID. So employees missed, as any employee in any organization grappling with hybrid or remote work, employees missed part of that physical being together culture build and culture experience. And that was the impetus for them deciding to relocate their customer service staff. So these are the challenges that many companies were faced with, especially for people who were in traditionally virtual roles, in this case at Patagonia, customer care, but also struggling with how do you maintain culture? How do you maintain a sense of belonging and connectedness? It's all part of, and I've talked about this on my other videos, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, of being a sense of belonging, being a sense of something. And Patagonia has said, we're going to need to relocate you. You've got not 1 or 2 geographic options. You've got 7 metro areas you can move to within 60 miles of being in. But I wanted you to get a sense of the kind of power that an organization can leverage when it grows through behaviors that align with its founding, with its ethics, with its purpose. If your business is driven primarily by making your months, making your quarters financially, and then outperforming your annual estimates, you're dead. You just don't know it. If your focus is more on strategy, you're dead. If your focus is on operational efficiency, that's great. But ultimately, there's only one lasting competitive advantage, and Patagonia has lived it since its inception. Focus on its people. Focus on your sense of purpose. We call it probity, or doing well, or doing minimal negative impact at the least. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. Patagonia, one of the most respected companies in the world, if not just the United States. And please like this, subscribe to my channel, make a comment. All of the links to the articles will be below. And let me know what you think. I really appreciate you spending the time to come and check out the video today. Thank you.